Been looking to get this guy on the channel for some time. One of the nicest men in football. Steve Sutton has stories of Peter Shilton, Brian Clough and his time at Nottingham Forest. Steve Sutton, next. Sutty, fantastic to see you again, looking so well. Let's go right back to the beginning, your Forest career. How did you get to the club in the first place?
Well, youth football, I guess. I was playing for the school. I went through the county system, through Derbyshire County. And I remember Peter Taylor coming and watching a game or a set of games. And I was with John Lukic, was with Derbyshire as well at that time, and he'd signed for Leeds. And I actually played centre half in 2 of the 3 games that were there that he watched. So I played centre half and went in goal for the 3rd game, and John played centre half. That was the first time I know that anything was sort of happening. Then I was invited to go training with Derby. They just won the league, so that would be 1975. I would think I'd be 14. I went and trained with the first team at Derby. And then Peter Taylor was at Forest. So yeah, he was at Forest, and I went to Derby on trial. And then Forest sort of stepped in very late on in the day. I've been to Manchester United, been to Stoke, been to Aston Villa for trials and things like that. And then we got a phone call from, I think it was John Sheridan rang up, who was the first team coach then at Forest, saying, Mr. Clough would like to meet you. So he came, he brought Brian over. It was a dark night sometime, I don't know, in October, November, something like that. They came over and he sat in our house with John Sheridan, and we talked to my dad. And then he sort of said, right, a fortnight later, we want you to come and play in our A team, which I went and played in the A team, as it was then, the youth team, in a cup final. I played in a cup final on the City Ground. I was 15, these were under 18s. I think I saved a penalty and we won the game anyway. And the lads weren't very happy because their goalkeeper, who played all the way through, was dropped for me to play. So there was a bit of animosity there straight off. And then he came over for a Sunday lunch, brought all the family over, Nigel and Simon and Vivian and his wife. And they came over, had Sunday lunch in the local pub. I signed the forms afterwards, or my dad signed the forms afterwards. I got a signing on fee of putting the phone in, because we hadn't got a phone in the house. We used to have to go across to my nan's across the road if we wanted to phone anybody. So he had the phone put in for us so that I could ring from Nottingham and talk to my mum and dad. So that was my signing on fee in those days. And then I got a phone call on one Sunday night to say, what are you doing tomorrow night? I said, nothing. He said, this is Brian Clough. I said, oh, right, okay. He said, well, there's a game. We've got a game at Derby. If you fancy, bring your gloves and your boots and we'll see if we can get you on. So that was Kevin Hector's testimonial.
Right.
21,000 there at the baseball ground for his testimonial, full house, a lot of fighting and stuff. And he said, right, you're playing second half. So I went on and played in the Forest first team. I'd just turned 16 in a testimonial in front of 21,000 fans, which was nice. Kept a clean sheet as well, second half. With I think Chapman played. God, it was the side that was sort of halfway up the second division at that time, of the old second division. We sort of signed in it. I played in that game, and he said, right, we need you to come and watch a game. Come and watch a game at Forest, and they'd won by the time I went, sat in the director's box and stuff. They sort of gone up the league, and I think they won that game, and then they got promoted
right
into the first division, or which would be the Premier League now. They got promoted that night, but I was there, so there was lots of celebrations. And I remember him getting my dad out the. My dad went there. I think he got him out the director's box and down into the changing room and met John McGovern and all that. Who'd been at Derby. My dad was a big Derby fan. He'd been a season ticket holder at Derby for 50 years. So he knew John McGovern and John O'Hare and whatever, who were in Derby stalwarts. So he met that and he said, right, young man, when you going to sign for me? I said, right, I'll sign, do it now. So that was, because I was on schoolboy forms and I was just 16. So I was then able to sign full time. So he took us into the office and we signed full time there. And then I was there then for 14 years, was it something like that? 14, 15 years.
It's amazing the detail that, that the manager took the trouble to, meet your family effectively and get so involved in everything early on, which obviously must make you feel about 10 foot tall, but it's amazing that a manager got involved to that extent.
Well, it did. There must have been some calls that I was half decent. I don't know. I was playing for Ashbourne Town. I think scouts came and watched me there. That was men's league. So I was playing in the men's league at 15. It was quite bizarre because I don't think he did that for all the players that joined that year. I don't know. They never mentioned it. He made a real fuss. And I remember my dad saying, you want to sign him, but you've never seen him play. And he sort of said, I have seen him play. I was stood behind a tree there when he was playing Ashbourne Town. I went to watch him and he was stood behind a tree, so nobody knew. He said, yeah, I've seen him play 3 or 4 times. So
do you think that was true or not?
You couldn't tell, could you? It sounded good at the time and it convinced me that anyway. So I think my dad was a bit upset I didn't go to Derby.
It's never occurred to me before, but you kind of came in right at the start, well, not quite at the start, but of that kind of fairy tale period, as you mentioned, with promotion and then winning the first division title, European Cups. So how was that for you as not quite a passenger, but not being kind of front and centre in that, but being a player while all of that is happening? Are you enjoying that, or are you thinking, I've got no chance of getting in the team, particularly once Shilton has signed for the club and things like that? Because that Shilton signs, it's like, what a great goalkeeper, but you must think, oh, that's me, another one down the pecking order.
Yeah, there were all of those things. We're excited with the way it was going, excited with the games, and winning the league. First and foremost, 78 was it, won the league, something like that, 78, 79. Getting into Europe was fantastic. We thought we might have a chance on the bench. Obviously, Chris Woods was there. He was on the bench. And then he brought Jim Montgomery in as experience for the second European Cup. And Jim was great to work with. He was really, really nice guy. And I learned a lot of goalkeeping tricks of the trade, if you like. He was an old stage. I mean, he would probably be 35, 36 when he came to Forest. So it was, can I learn from this guy? Can I learn from Schultz first and foremost, which we did. Training techniques. Peter was all about, and it was all about Peter, and it had to be, because he was the best for me in the world. So Peter didn't pass a lot on verbally, but what he did was through watching him work and through his dedication to his work, that rubbed off on me, I think. And his training exercises. I use his training exercises right up until I finished coaching. Right. Which is 40 years on. Because there's nothing wrong with them. Nothing wrong with they made him a great goalkeeper. His reflexes, his ability for angles, his ability to get into position quickly hasn't changed. And I just thought that was, so you learn from that. Jim talked to me a lot more about dealing with pressure, coping with big games, coping with setbacks as much as anything, and coping a little bit with injuries, because you knock a thumb up and you miss training, and what do I do? And he put me through a load of little exercises that you can do while your hands are injured, you can't catch the ball, or your shoulders. You can still do other stuff.
Right.
And he sort of pointed me in the right direction there. So you're absorbing all this information while you're not in any pressure, because I was playing in the third team, playing in the reserves. Reserve goalkeeper didn't travel then, so there was no travelling. They only took 13 players with them, and one of them wasn't a goalkeeper. So there was no real pressure. I mean, there were great nights. Beating Liverpool at the City Ground in the European Cup we all sat around the edge of the track. It was that the kids we sat around the edge of the track. And that was just a fantastic night. And just watching those players play was awesome. It was a little bit unbelievable, from my point of view. If you're thinking, well, is it real? Because I never considered myself going to be a footballer. It just sort of happened. I had no idea what I was going to do. I'd probably end up in the quarry with my dad, lumping stone. But so it wasn't as if I had this focus and you'd gone to an academy and you'd gone.
It'd not been your dream for 20 years that you could see yourself doing this. Yeah.
No, I mean, I kicked a ball against a wall and taught myself how to catch the ball. We got a very rough wall on the end of a building into a field, so I could dive after it. And the ball used to come off at all angles. And I spent hours and hours and hours. They reckon the 10,000 hours for development. Well, I did that in the first week at home. There was nothing else to do. You were either riding your bike around the village causing trouble, or you were kicking a football. We hadn't got a football field, so I spent hours and hours and hours as a kid kicking the ball against the wall and catching it. And my dad, kicking the ball at me, and then me running in crying. My mum going, "What have you done at this lad?" She said, "I only scored past him." I'll be, "Oh, my dad scored." So there was only one position I was ever going to play, was goalkeeper. But it was always, oh, right, okay, I'm a footballer now. And that's a bit how I've been through life. All right, well, I'm coaching now. All right, I'm decorating now. And there's no big deal about it. And it was awe-inspiring, that team, because the big names that you've got, Larry Lloyd, Kenny Burns, Ian Bowyer, Shilton in goal, Viv Anderson, there's still names that people at Forest mention that team, quite rightly so. We felt a little bit aggrieved in the late 80s that we'd sort of gone half the way back and got to Wembley, and we were sort of pushing for the title a little bit, and we sort of think that team's sort of been overlooked a little bit. It was overshadowed, and quite rightly so, by the European Cup squad. But I think we just felt a little bit that we were doing our bit for the club to bring it back, if you know what I mean, and sort of get the
yes, without the European days, that kind of late 70s, early 80s, you'd probably look at that late 80s, early 90s and say that was Forest glory days if you'd not had the European days before.
Absolutely would. And we had a tremendous squad together, in the late 80s. It came together. And if you think of a manager that's done the European Cup, and then that team has folded, but the manager stayed, and then he's built it up to another. And we couldn't play in Europe, don't forget.
Yeah.
We weren't allowed into Europe, so there was no way of knowing. We felt we had a team geared up to go and win the UEFA Cup, certainly. Because we were a counter-attacking team. We've got flair, we've got great players, Neil Webb, Franz Carver's pace down the side, got Hodgie in the side, and all those sort of players that we got a really, really good side that we thought we could have gone into Europe and done really, really well. But we weren't. It wasn't to be that. So that was a downside of it. And I did travel actually on the third European, after they won it the second time. They went into the third season of the European Cup, and I actually made the squad. Jim retired, so it was me and Lee Smelt, I think, were at the club. Right. And I went on the trip. We went to CSK Sofia. I think we lost 1-0 out there, and then we lost 1-0 at home as well. So we sort of went out in the first round. So I didn't experience actually travelling with the European squad, only the one game. And that was the season, that was 1980, I think. I got into I made my debut. So yeah, I played at Norwich on my debut. It was kept very, very quiet. Schultz had got flu, apparently.
You have some doubt about that.
Well, it was Cheltenham week. So there was, Peter Taylor sort of muted after the game, but he's been kept right up to the game. Oh, Schultz will be here. Schultz is coming. He's staying away from the squad. He's going to be here at dinner time. He's travelling over. He'll be fine. So we stayed out at Barnum Broom, which is a nice little country house, before the game. So I was under no stress because Schultz was turning up. So anyway, it got to about 1:30, 1:45, and Peter came over and said, "Oh, you're playing." Schultz hasn't made it. You're playing. So that was it. An hour before kickoff.
And you were 19, I think, at the time, weren't you?
19, yeah. I think they'd known all along Schultz was going to make it, but they didn't want to put me under any pressure. So, played 1-1 draw at Carrow Road. So that was really good. And then I played on the Tuesday night at Watford. I think we lost 4-0 in the League Cup. I think Kenny Burns gave a penalty for some reason. He punched the ball out of my hands in the goal there, and we lost 4-0. Luther Blissett, I think, might have got a hat trick.
All right. But how did you feel? Because you're kind of, I mean, it might have been Cheltenham Festival, but at least you're getting into the side. I wonder whether you kind of, with Shilton in the team, whether you ever could see a path to the first team, or whether it was, you thought, I'm going to have to go somewhere else because while Shilton's still here, I'm never going to get in.
Yeah, and I did actually go on loan to Derby in that time. I made the debut, and then I went out on loan to Derby. I can't remember the years now. Would that be 81, 82, something like that?
Yeah, I seem to remember, yeah.
At the back end of the season, I ended up playing 13, 14 games. Well, I went to Mansfield first. I think I went to Mansfield on loan at the end of one season and played 13, 14 games. And then Schultz was still there and Lee Smelt was there. So I went out again to Derby after Christmas. I went out, I think I had 3 months on loan at Derby at the end of that season. Then Schultz left and I came back and got into the team.
So when Shilton goes, you're cheering, are you, presumably, because at last you can see a pathway in?
Well, you can see the path, but by the same token, you're going, they're big boots to fill.
Yes.
So we went away. We went to Spain pre-season. I had an absolute nightmare. And we played in a tournament, and I think we played, might have been Bayern Munich or Cologne or somebody like that. And we were 2-0 down at half time, and it was 2 of the goals. They were both my fault. And I'm sort of sat here, and the door is at the side of me here, where they come in. And I sat there, and Clough just walked in and went, whack, straight across my face. Gone, are you going to put he had a right blast at me. And I knew it was right. It hurt, but I knew it was right. The slap didn't hurt, but the comments hurt. And anyway, we played well in the second half. We lost 2-0 in the game, but I think that sort of set his mind up that he needed another goalkeeper.
Right.
That one incident, that one game. And we started the season, I remember we started the season at West Ham. We won at West Ham. I think we won 1-0, 2-0, something like that. Saved a penalty. Played really, really well. And at half time, Hans van Breukelen came down. We didn't know anything about it. He came in and the gaffer said, we've just signed the new goalkeeper.
At half time?
And you said, oh, right, okay. Lovely. And Hans came up to me, he says, I don't know why I've signed. So I don't know why I've signed because you are brilliant. Why have I signed? So I played in that game, and then I played on the Tuesday night against Manchester United at home, and played really well. Colin Todd got sent off. I think Colin Todd got sent. It was when the handball came in, and you got sent off if you handballed and it was immediate red. That'd be a
Right.
silly rule. And he stuck his hand up just outside the box and got sent off. And I think Brian Robson scored from the free kick. We lost 2-0. And then he put Hans in, even though I played well. I guess because he'd signed him, he had to put him in. And Hans was distinctly average when he first came. He really was distinctly average in his training. Typical foreign trainer, parried everything, punched everything, and I'm thinking, oh dear, what a shame, because it was all there for me and whatever. But he developed very, very quickly. Well, Hans was very, very bright. He learnt what the English game was about. He knew he had to come and catch the ball. He was expected to catch the ball. So he worked really, really hard. I'd like to think I helped him with that. I'd like to think that I helped him with what it was, with his training. Spent a lot of time with Hans. I really like Hans. I've seen him occasionally at games, and we talk about it. And he's a super chap. And got on really, really well with him. And in the end, he was a really, really good goalkeeper. I mean, he was only there probably 18 months, I think, something like that. And then he was sold pretty quickly. Nobody really knows how that happened. I guess there was an offer, and they took it. And I was sort of back in the team. I played. He did his cruciate, I think, or an ankle ligament or something. So I ended up playing 18, 19 games, and I played really well. So I think they thought, right, now's the time we can move something up and we can make some money on this guy.
Do you think he thought you were too young to be his goalkeeper, if you like?
I think that, and probably there were too many mistakes in me at that time.
Right.
Because there was, it was a big step up, even, from youth team football to reserve team football. Although reserve team football was a lot better than it is now because it's all ex-pros. Well, ex-players in the team coming back. So those teams, some of those teams were better than the first teams you put out sometimes, that you were playing against. So you went to Coventry, and Coventry could have 4 or 5 players coming back that were all in the first team.
Yeah.
And really, really competitive games because these blokes were trying to get back into the first team. So they were a lot more competitive now than the under 23 games that I saw anyway, certainly while I was coaching. And I think that taught you more as a player coming through. I think you sort of, you developed quicker in those leagues, I think, than you did then, because you knew you had to. We've got a couple of good goalkeepers behind us as well, that if you didn't play well, then you'd be out of that as well. And then where are you? 22, 23, 24. If you're not playing either in the first team or you're not playing regularly in the reserves, then you might as well pack the game up because you're not going to go anywhere. So, and you weren't allowed at Forest. You weren't allowed to step back and enjoy yourself, and well, not enjoy yourself, but you weren't allowed to relax away from it. There was a performance expectation that if you fell below, then you knew about it, and quite rightly so as well.
So when did you feel, as a goalkeeper, when did you feel established, feet under the table, I'm the first choice goalkeeper for as long into the future as I can see? When did you feel comfortable in that?
I don't think I ever did.
Right.
I don't think I ever did. I think I played regularly, possibly 88, 89 for a spell where you think, right, this is mine, it's going well, the team were playing well. I don't think you were allowed to feel that, if you know what I mean. There was never a chance to take things for granted. There was always an edge that if you don't perform, you're out. So you had to be at it all the time. There was no way you could sort of, oh well, I'm now, I can do this, I can do that, and do the other. It might have come over as that with players, but I don't think at Forest you were ever allowed to be that. As I say, probably 88, 89, I was comfortable in myself going out, but I always had concentration issues. I always had sort of, what am I doing here issues. I guess that was confidence a little bit in my ability, although I knew my ability was as good as anybody else's. I knew that because you watch games and I knew I could do things that other goalkeepers could do that were the best. We have, over the years, we've had some fun with Ray Clements, but I knew I could do what Ray Clements did, just that he did it all the time. And every week was Ray at his best. Every week was Shilton at his best. He didn't have, if he had a bad game, he didn't have two bad games.
Yeah.
He never had two bad games on the bounce. And that was part of my aim, was if things didn't go well, and what constitutes a bad game for a goalkeeper, probably letting a poor goal in, or letting 3 or 4 goals in. You think, right, I could have saved 2 of those. That doesn't happen again. That's where you sort of focus. That's where you focus yourself. And I found that probably the hardest thing was the concentration of having to do stuff. And we were a good team then, and you weren't having a lot to do in games.
Yeah.
So there were long periods where you would watch the game, then all of a sudden you were called into action. And that was what I found difficult, particularly if you'd had a bad goal kick or you'd had a throw out and you think, yeah, I'm going to get a doing at half time for that. And you're sort of waiting up to half time for it to happen. You're hoping you have something good to do, so someone forgets it. And
Yeah.
you don't get it in the net. I grew out of that eventually, where I was, I say, probably 88, 89, where I was really comfortable with myself.
You're playing at Wembley at that point as well.
Yeah.
Cup finals. And
the bigger the games, the better for me. The bigger the atmosphere. I sort of hated the first round of the FA Cup or the League Cup or whatever, where there was perhaps 2,000 people there or something, and you're playing, no disrespect to going to Bradford or somewhere like that, that we played at Halifax in the first round of the FA Cup or something, or the third round of the FA Cup, and there was about 500 people there. You're sort of thinking, what am I doing here? Then you go to Old Trafford with 60,000 and you think, right, this is me.
Yeah.
This is where I want to be. And that was when the games were easy, really. Mentally, they were quite easy. No, I never felt absolutely comfortable with it. I think there was always I don't know, it was a country boy feeling with me that this is all, I shouldn't really be here. This is big lad stuff, and I don't know.
It's interesting you never planned for it, because you were talking earlier about, it was never the plan. But you can imagine if you're 10 and you're thinking, I'm going to be a goalkeeper, I'm going to play for Manchester United, then I'm going to play for England. As you go through, I guess you think, well, I always thought I was going to play for Manchester United, and then I thought I was going to play for England. So if you've not had those thoughts, maybe you're not prepared for them. I don't know.
No, and I was always comfortable away from football. So I'd always got my brass band in, and we'd always got family, and it was.
I was going to ask if you got the trumpet with you.
Yeah, there's a stack in the music room. No, but there was always something else.
Yeah.
So it wasn't. And did I take it as seriously as I should have done? Possibly, looking back at how football is now, then no, I didn't. But that was the general nature of it. Was still a sport. It wasn't a business.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. Footballers now are businesses, aren't they? They are their own. They've got their own brands.
Yeah.
They've got that. The way that the money they earn now. We weren't on that. They weren't the same. Ways of getting into you as there is now, social media and all that sort of stuff. We just went out, we played, we went down the pub after training, you have a couple of beers, nobody bothered you, in fact, they'd be waiting for you to go and play snooker or something, a couple of lads that we knew, go and play dominoes or whatever it was. It wasn't that serious, if you get where I mean. It was on a Saturday at 3:00, but the rest of it was all of it, well, we play football now. That sort of it. Now it's a lifestyle that you can't afford not to be at the top of your game. Yeah. You can't afford to do those things now because everybody else is fitter, stronger, better prepared. The players have never been better prepared than they are now at all levels of the game. Could I have stood that discipline that there is now? I really don't know. If you're brought up with it, I think it's different.
Yeah. If you've gone through an academy and whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. If I sort of gone into it at 18, 19, and then all of a sudden you try and change this level where you're in the gym, you're doing this, you're watching videos and stuff. I don't know whether that would have.
But isn't your life better? Your life is better, isn't it? Your lifestyle is better because you've played at Wembley, you've played in the top division, but you've been able to go out and play your trumpet or trombone. I can never remember. You've been able to go, but at the same time,
absolutely.
Surely not.
But
go down the pub and whatever and have a life and get a global perspective, perhaps.
Yeah, and I do think it was a more rounded approach. I feel a bit for these players. Yes, they've got the money, they've got the lifestyle, but can they go for a walk down the road?
Yeah.
Can they take the dog? Can they take the dog for a walk? Can they go to the cinema? Can they go and watch another team play or whatever? No, because they're hounded. And if you're in the crowd at Manchester City and you go and watch a game, there will be a camera that finds you. Yeah. And you just think, no. I remember playing at Arsenal in the FA Cup quarter final. I think we beat Arsenal 2-1, 2-0, 2-1.
Was that the Brian Rice game? Yeah.
And we parked at Crick on the motorway, which is Northampton. We stayed in the hotel there. So we got back there and I drove back up after that game, drove back up to Hartington and conducted a brass band concert. Right. Which started at 8:30. I put it back half an hour because I thought I could just about make 8:30, and I did about a minute and a half. So I played at Highbury, won the cup match, and then drove straight back up as fast as I could and did a brass band concert, conducted a brass band concert at night, and that's how it was. You couldn't do that now.
You don't think Premier League players drive home to conduct brass band concerts these days? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm absolutely sure they don't, or any other league for that matter. But that was the level of bother we got. None. Yeah. None whatsoever. We would go out into town at Christmas and people would put you in a taxi and send you home, and just or jump in a taxi with you and say, right, I know where Ricey lives. Come on, Ricey, we'll all, yeah. And we all got in a taxi and dropped 3 or 4 players off and no either. Now it would be all over the back pages. It would be not anything happened. We're not in any trouble or anything like that. But it was just the fact that you were out having a beer on a Christmas night out, and everybody, the fans were all loving it. You had good interaction with them. Whereas I feel a bit for the fans because I think they've lost their players as a touchy-feely, handshake, sitting with them for 5 minutes. Like we used to go in the Jubilee Club. And everybody would come up and have a chat, good, bad, or indifferent. They'd come round, hello, well done today, or thought you might say, yeah, perhaps I should, and all that sort of stuff. I think they're so costed away now that fans possibly get a little bit of a raw deal with the players. But that's just how it's gone. That's just how it's gone because, everybody's got a camera, everybody's got a recording device on the phone, and you can end up very quickly in saying something or doing something that will make the back pages, and I think that's really poor, and I feel sorry for the players that sort of have that now. But that's the way it's gone. They learn to live with it, and they learn to cope otherwise, and that's to sort of stay out of the way, I think.
There is much more to come from Steve Sutton very soon about his departure from Nottingham Forest and also playing in those cup finals as well. I need to thank my members of Chippers Club, whether you're bronze, silver or gold, all of it helps the channel. My gold members this week are Christian Tonnies, William Hutton, Thomas Newton, Leggett and James, Danny Moriarty, James Sorden, Nick Hemphill, Ant Adam, Damian Miles, Henny the Hero, Ian Russell, Richard Waterhouse, Paul Metcalf, Tim Hayward, Alan Francis, David Shelton, Mark Davis, Ez Chowdhury, Tiny Media, Philip Sheldon, Paul Harrison and Mark German. If you want to sign up for Chippers Club, I'll pop a link in the description below. Let's get back to Steve Sutton. When you left Forest, when did you kind of see the writing on the wall? When did you think, my time here might be, there's a story coming, isn't there? When did you think that you might be on your way?
Well, it took a long time actually, because I was out of contract for a season and a half there, and I was on a month-to-month contract, which they did in those days. You couldn't just walk out when your contract was up. You couldn't just walk out like you can now. You run a month-to-month, and I wouldn't sign a new contract that they were offering. They wouldn't get anywhere near the money that I thought I should be getting. So I was out of the team. Then I got injured in training, dislocated my shoulder. And Forest, my first day back training, I hadn't trained for about 7-8 weeks. And I came back on a Friday, and the Forest were playing at QPR on the Saturday, and Mark Crossley had been playing. And the gaffer came up to me and said, how's the shoulder? First time he'd spoken to me for 6 weeks.
Right.
How's the shoulder? I said, well, I'm just going to go and try it now. He says, well, go and try it, because I'm thinking of playing you tomorrow. And I haven't played for, God, I haven't played for 6 months.
You've not had a reserve game or anything?
No. Well, I've been injured for 6 or 8 weeks. I had played a couple right at the start of the season, but nothing much. I'm thinking of playing you tomorrow. I said, okay, I'll go and have a shoulder. It was absolutely killing me. I couldn't sort of get it to there. I couldn't get it right up. And he wandered over again while the lads were training. He said, how is it? I said, it's really sore, Gaff. I don't think I'm going to make it. I said, all right, well, I'll see him. I'll talk to him in the office after. So I got in the office, and just as he was laying into me, Piercy walked in. Stuart, come and talk with your mate here. Piercy's going, not my mate. So he was having a right go at me about this, and he says, I understand you've talked with Davy Pleat down at Leicester. I said, yeah. He said, you said I could go and talk to him. Yes, I know. Well, he's rung me and told me that you don't want to play for me anymore. I said, no, I haven't said that at all. He says, well, when do you think you're going to be fit? I said, well, there's a reserve game on Thursday. I think, I would like to train this week, playing that, and then see how it is. So he said, right, well, I'll tell you when you're going to play. He says, and it won't be on Thursday. I said, I don't want to see you in the club until I'll give you a call. So there was a lot of swearing going on at this stage. Get out. So I went, picked my boots and my gloves up, and went and trained on my own, running around the field in Radcliffe on my own, and diving on my own, just nobody about, just falling over, getting up, falling over, getting up. Thursday passed. I hadn't been into the ground, hadn't heard anything, so it's all over. This is all over.
Yeah, it's not looking good.
It's not looking good, no. And I knew there was a game on the following Tuesday night at the City Ground, 7 o'clock, something like that. So at 5 o'clock, I got a phone call from the gaffer. Steve, you playing tonight? I said, oh, right, okay, thank you. So I went down, played. Rusty as hell. I think I lost a couple of games. It's just bizarre. He said, right, well, thanks for that. He says, we won't be seeing you again. So I said, well, do I come in training? Yeah, come in training. Yeah, fine now. So, but I think the chance of me playing in the first team again.
Why? So why was it? What had he just decided he'd moved on, or?
I think so. Yeah, I think Crossley was doing okay. Big Mark, lovely lad. Get on well with Mark. He's fine. He'd sort of come through the same way that I had, really, come into the club, and the team was doing well, and he played a couple of games. I had food poisoning, and he played a couple of games against Liverpool and did okay. So I think that sort of gave him the opportunity to show that he was okay with that, and he ended up playing the games. Yeah, and it was bizarre, because 6 or 8 weeks later, I've been training and every morning with Alan Hill down at the training ground. Morning, Sutton, you're going to sign? What are you offering, Alan? Same as before? Yeah, no, I'm not signing. And it just became a big standoff. It was all very silly. I mean, I should have just walked in. Looking back, I should have walked in and gone, right, let's sort this out. This is really, really silly. Let's meet a compromise somewhere in the middle. Let's sort it out, sign a contract, and we can get on with life and playing. But the little stubborn side of me came out, and it was no, I'm not doing it. I can't now. I can't back down now. Anyway, one Friday morning, Ronnie Fenton called me into the office. I'm thinking, oh, God. He says, right, how much do you want for your contract? So I just thought of a silly number. He's gone, right, okay, I'll talk to the gaffer about that. So he rang me. I came back by the time I had a shower. Yeah, there we go. There's the form. We've got the amount on, signed. New contract, signing on fee and all that sort of stuff, and everything was sorted out. I thought, oh, great. I'll get back to it now. And then within 10 days, I'd signed for Derby. Right. So obviously, being out of contract, they couldn't have a fee for me. So they got me on a contract so that they could. I think I went to Derby for 300,000.
Oh, I see. Right.
Out of contract, I could have gone there for nothing. So they got me onto a contract quickly,
right?
So that they could get a fee for me, which it took me years to sort that one out. I just thought it was all very silly, but so I ended up, and I left on a Tuesday morning. I rang Arthur Cox rang me on the Monday. He said, "Do you want to?" I spoke with Brian. Do you want to come across and have a look and sort some details out? So I went across to the baseball ground, signed on the Monday night, went back into the city ground. They were off, day off. Took my boots, took my gloves, never spoke to anybody. And it was 10 years virtually to the day that I went before I went back into the city ground.
Wow.
Just never spoke to anybody, never spoke to Clough again.
Ever?
After that. No, well, yes, again, but it was sort of after
he retired.
Saw him at a couple of games and stuff. I think we actually went round, didn't we? When we took in some cheese just to say thank you for everything. I think that was after he'd retired. He wasn't very well. He loved Shilton cheese, and Hartington made great Shilton cheese. So over the years, we'd taken him cheese at Christmas and stuff. So we took him a half of Shilton over. And yeah, we didn't talk. He wasn't at his best. We didn't talk a lot, but we stayed about an hour. He made a fuss of our little one Shelby. Showed her all around the house and everything. And but no, that was, and it was sad how it ended at Forest because it'd been so great.
Yeah.
Just to walk out and not speak to anybody and not have anything to do with them at all was a little bit sad. But as they say, that's football. That's how it happens. I won't be the only one that's happened to, and it will happen again to people. But yeah, it was just a bit. Having had real great times and really enjoying my time there, it was quite a big wrench to get up and do something different every day, because you get into a nice routine of what you're doing. It was a nice lifestyle. I can't deny that. It was a lovely lifestyle. But up sticks and went to Derby. We stayed in the same house, but I travelled across to Derby, which wasn't too bad. And things were all right there for a couple of seasons. Then I got injured again, and then it was a struggle getting back. Yeah, and it just sort of faded away at the end.
Fizzled out.
There was no big glory day at the end of it. It was just sort of went from Derby to Birmingham, and then I did my knee, my cruise ship, which put me out for 9 months. And I was very near at the end of my contract at Birmingham, so that really didn't. Sort of came out of football, sort of fell out of football, really. Finished with injury, so there was no big send off, there was no big clap at me, coming off at the end of a game and thanks everybody 20 years in the game, but it didn't sort of happen like that. So a bit like myself, just faded away into the sunset.
So it was the next time you mentioned you went back to the City Ground 10 years later. Was that as a coach or with Gary, or was that like a visit?
No, I went. I think I went back with Leeds. and I was coaching
right,
at Leeds.
right.
So I left in 91, 2000. Yeah, it would have been with Leeds, possibly. I think the year Forest came up, Leeds played them in the league, in the Premier League. Well, it will be just before the Premier League. No.
Yes, 92 was Premier League. Yeah.
Yes, so it would be 2000 and 2001 or 2000, something like that. We played. So 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it hadn't changed. Nothing had changed. Exactly the same colours, which was quite nice in its own way. That was quite pleasing. Yeah, so I was coaching up at Leeds, and we came down. I can't remember the score.
It's interesting. You talked earlier about the kind of footballers going out these days. They can't do it, and how it's all changed. You probably saw the beginning of that, didn't you? When you were at Leeds with all that, the money that was swirling around, and then suddenly wasn't. But that kind of was the beginning, or it seemed to me, the beginning of that celebrity football culture that we have now.
I think it was. I think there was a big change there. I mean, the money that Leeds tried to invest and maintain. I mean, they took a 10-year gamble on being in the top 5 or 6, or getting into Europe in the Premier League. And with that, they tried to buy players in that weren't quite good enough. Some were, some weren't, but it was always going to be a massive, massive gamble. And I think within the club, the experienced ones in the club sort of said, this can't last. The financial side of this can't last, so let's enjoy it while we can. And they got to the semi-finals of the European Cup, which was as good as it got. I think they were relegated the following year, which sort of summed up how it went at Leeds. You know, everything was going really, really well, and then it all just fell apart like a house of cards. It just.
Was there a moment where you realised that it was heading south?
Yeah, I think halfway through that second season when we couldn't win a game.
Right.
We're sort of third, fourth, bottom of the league, and you're thinking we can't buy a win here. And I think we just brought Robbie Fowler in, and there were players, Rio Ferdinand and all those sort of players. Some good players had left. We'd had the Bowyer Woodgate affair as well, when with that was ongoing. So there were lots of changes within the football club, and it just couldn't stand them. And the sad part about the Leeds affair was that good people lost their jobs. Good people lost the cleaners, and the chefs, and the people that were on £100 a week lost their jobs because they couldn't afford to keep them. Yet, there were lads on 40 grand a week, not bothering whether they played or not. And that was a really harsh lesson in the way that this can go. The footballers were looked after, but the people that swept the car park and did the stands and made you cups of tea and stuff like that were out the door, and that was a really sad end. That was a really sad end to the Leeds affair. I was in the tunnel second to last game. We got relegated, and then we played at Chelsea. I think it was the second to last game we played at Chelsea, and the Leeds secretary walked me down the tunnel and said, "We've got to sack you." What now? I said, "Well, no, Monday." So coming back on the bus, oh yeah, I've been sacked, and that was a bit funny. So we had to fight to get our stuff out of there and go back and get all my gear, and that was a strange feeling, saying goodbye to everybody. So it's been some strange finishing to football. I never said goodbye to anybody at Birmingham when I finished that, because I was injured. I just lay on the treatment table, and the guy said, "Right, well, don't bother coming in till 2:00 tomorrow because I've got all these other injuries." I said, "Oh, well, don't bother. I'm not coming down here for half an hour's treatment on a cruise ship. It needs a lot of work." So I sort of went and found Trevor Francis was the manager. Went and found Trevor. Said, look, let's get this sorted. I'm not coming down here every day at 3 o'clock to have an hour's physio and then go back, and I might not even get that. So we sorted the contract out, and then I didn't even go back into the physio room and say I wasn't going back. I just got in the car and came home. And
he's still stood in there waiting for you.
He's still waiting for you. He came with me a week later. Are you bothering? I said, no, I'm not bothering. He said, no. But the physio was all right. He sorted me out with the physio at Notts County that I knew. So I went into Notts County to see the physio in the afternoon, and he did me some work. And there got me back to where at least I could bend my knee. Right. Big Sam was there, and he came in one day, and what the hell are you doing here? So I told him, he didn't know anything about it. So I told him, he says, oh, well, if you're coming in for physio, you can do some coaching with my lads. So I said, right, that's fine, I'll do that. And so I didn't pay for physio, and he didn't pay me for the coaching. It sort of worked quite nicely. It got me back on the training field. I couldn't kick the ball, but there were enough about that could. So it was just a matter of standing and pointing in the right direction. Got Darren Ward, actually, and we sort of pushed Darren. He ended up becoming international goalkeeper. He played for Wales. So
you've had a few of them, haven't you? When you look through your coaching career.
I'd like to think I'd helped one or two along the way. I've got Nigel Martin, Paul Robinson, and Scott Carson up at Leeds, all in one batch, which was really, really good. They were a good training group. Helped Darren Ward, I think, a little bit. Pushed Darlow towards the Premier League, and possibly, I don't think he will now, but there was a chance he might have got in the England squad. Worked hard with Campy, Lee Camp, got him into the Irish squad, I think it was. They've done it themselves, but I just like to think a little nudge in the right way, probably attitude as much as anything, and pushing them and just pushing them in the right direction, coaching wise, and sort of just tidying one or two little bits up. But mainly, I think with Lee, it was an attitude towards training. I think he was quite comfortable in himself. I think he was quite comfortable in his work, and I just pushed him a little bit towards the uncomfortable, and he responded. And we've ended up being good friends, and we became good friends. I didn't know him before, but we became good friends. And I think he appreciated just being, come on, let's work a little bit harder. You can do this. Oh, yeah, I'm tired. Oh, let's push through tired. And then tired comes a little bit later. In a fortnight's time, your tired becomes a little bit later. We can do a little bit more. And I think he was quite appreciative of that. And I think that pushed him along. And whether it extended his career a little bit, I don't know. But he sort of, I think he appreciated it. Darlow appreciated the work that we did. And you just think, well, Jordan Smith, worked with Jordan from the age of probably 12, 13, something like that. He hasn't just pushed on as far as I would have liked to have gone, but he's chance of playing in the Premier League. He's become a professional footballer. If you can get them to be full-time professional footballer, then I think you've done your job as an academy coach at outfield or whatever. If you can push them through and they get a living, then you've done the job. They're not all going to make Nottingham Forest players. They're not all going to make Premier League players. But if you can get them 20 years in the game as a job, then I think you've done your part as an academy coach. You've taught them what they need to do. You've taught them the basics. You've given them, if they are talented, hopefully you've tickled their talents enough to make them exceptional. If they're not talented, then hopefully you can instill in them a work ethic that they can work. And if you work hard, you'll be in the team. You see a lot of untalented players in the Premier League that are doing fantastic jobs in teams. The breaker-ups, the people that sit in front of the back four, your centre halves, don't have to be talented. You have to probably be quick in the Premier League, but don't have to be ultimately talented if they work hard and they know how to defend. You can teach that. And if they've got a natural ability to defend as well, then you're on a winner. And I think the disappointment from coaching is it's somebody you see with talent that can't tie up talent and hard work.
Yeah.
And I think a hard worker will always get a chance. Somebody with talent might get a chance, but if they can't, George Grant was a talent, but he could never ever translate that onto the football pitch for Nottingham Forest. I know he's playing as a professional football, which is great, but he could never just take that forward for Forest. And I thought that was always Henry Lansbury.
Yeah.
Was the same. What a talent. Could do anything on the training pitch. Absolutely anything. He could run, he could tackle, he can head it, he could pass a ball, he could stick the ball in the top corner. But getting him to do it every week in the first team was very, very difficult. And he's slowly working his way down, and he should still be up there.
Yeah.
Henry should still be up there. He should have been the mainstay of a Forest team for 10 years because I thought he was that talented. But he just couldn't. He couldn't bring it onto the football field every Saturday and every Tuesday night. And that then becomes disappointing as a coach that you can't tease that out of them. But that's how some people are.
Just to wrap up things, Sutty, because I've taken enough of your time. I'm not going to get you to play the trombone, but I think I know the answer to this, but you've been out of the game, what, 5 years-ish? Do you miss it at all? Do you miss that kind of day to day, or are you quite happy having done it?
I'm happy having done it. And I don't miss the travelling. I don't miss the politics that there are now. I don't miss the sports science that there is. I miss going out at 10 o'clock, whatever time, and training with the lads. I miss that banter. I miss that work. That's more than anything. The camaraderie that you have as a goalkeeping group, wherever I've been, has been fantastic. And it keeps you young, and it keeps you.
I don't know about that.
Buoyant. Well, no, obviously, I'm not doing too bad.
You're doing fine. You're doing fine. Yeah. Comparatively, yeah.
Yeah. So I miss that, but I don't miss the travelling, being away from home. I'm absolutely comfortable with my life at the moment. I've got a really nice life balance. I've got a lovely family and everything, and work is an option. We do, I'm a bit of decorating and stuff, but if we need to go out for a day or we want to go out for a day, we can do that. And I think that's where all the hard work over the last 40 years has left us in a position where it's nice. We have choices, and I think if you can come out at the end of your time with a choice, then I think you've not done too badly out of it. And we've got lots of choices at this end. I think we had football at the best time for me. It suited me at that time. Football now has transcended that. It's gone away. I think this is why Forest is struggling, because that Premier League has gone to such a level. Even at the bottom end of the Premier League is such a step from the Championship. And they've been out of it for so long that it will take time. And time isn't something you've got. I mean, if they can manage fourth bottom this season, that will be a real achievement. Stay in it and give themselves another chance to do it. I really hope they can. I really hope they can find some results and do that, because it is the place to be. It's the only place to be, really. But no, I wouldn't swap it. I wouldn't go back into it now if it was offered. I wouldn't. Taking all the back problems and my hip problems and my neck problems and not being able to walk some mornings. If I was fit and healthy, I don't think I would go back into it. The game's changed too much. It's now a business, and I think there are too many sidelines to the game now. You're not allowed to coach as I like to coach, and there are too many. You can't do that with them. You can't. No, they've done too much today. They've actually got a sweat on, so you can't work them now for 3 days. All that. Whereas we used to pound people into the ground till they couldn't walk, and we thought that was a really, really good morning's training.
And now you can't get out of bed because of it.
No, I can't get out of bed. No, absolutely. But that was it. You'd do a shooting session till you just couldn't get off the floor. I remember at Derby with Arthur Cox. he would just shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot players, just one after another. You're like that. And the ball would hit you, and you just, oh, I can't move anymore. They go, great session, great goalkeeping session. You'll be better for that. You know, in a mud about that deep, and you're thinking, oh, just get me off here. You know? But they were the good old days. Yeah, the people don't get muddy now. It wouldn't be any fun, would it?
No.
Not come off like a goal.
So it's been great catching up. It was always terrific travelling the country with you as we did to various places up and down the country. So some of which we enjoyed, some of which we'd never want to go back to.
Yeah, you're about right with that one. Weren't many we wanted to go back to.
No, it was fun. Thanks, Sophie. Appreciate your time. All the best.
All right. Cheers.
My thanks to Steve Sutton. Some brilliant stories. If you want to hear more fantastic stories from another goalkeeper, my chat with Lee Camp is here, or something that YouTube chooses specifically for you, that's here.